A few weeks ago, I tried making a freezer burrito recipe that I found on YouTube. The recipe was great. In fact, I ended up developing my own based on the video. My version is coming soon. The one I watched is linked below. But when it came to wrapping the filling in something, I was at an impasse. The guy in the video was using some low-calorie large tortillas he had gotten online from some place that I didn't have access to, and I had no such low-calorie tortilla alternatives around me. I searched local stores, scoured the internets, and found no tortillas in the market that would fit my needs. Those being a tortilla free from hydrogenated and polyunsaturated oils and relatively low calorie. And in the world of store-bought tortillas, I can have that cake, but for health's sake, I can't eat it. So I made my own tortillas, and they are far from traditional. More than 12 inches in diameter, yet light on carbs. Look at how thin these are. No oil, no bad stuff, no tearing, and big enough to fit an absurd amount of food. I mean an entire meal. These wraps are strong, so they won't tear. Super flexible, so none of that annoying cracking you get with conventional tortillas. See? No tears. You only need 3 ingredients to make these tortillas, and look, no oil. This is how you make a low-calorie tortilla that is big enough to stuff a meal inside it and durable enough to not spill out onto those big, meaty hands. In a pot goes some water, roughly 2 cups, and I set that on high just to get the water hot but not quite boiling. Alternatively, you could use the microwave for this. Next, I get out my food scale because it makes this quick process even more speedy. Throw on a mixing bowl, tare it, and for 6 12-inch plus truly gargantuan burrito-sized tortillas, I pour in 480 grams of all-purpose flour, roughly 4 cups, and 9 grams or 1½ teaspoons of salt. Give that a quick whisk to homogenize. Then I carefully pour in 250 grams or about 1 cup of my now steaming water. I'll need more later, so I just set that aside. If I decided to measure out the water by volume, I'd have spent more time than I'd care to trying not to burn myself. But this, for me, is just so much more straightforward. Now mix until a rough dough starts to form. This shouldn't take very long. At this point, I like to get in there with my hands and just work the remaining flour into the forming mass. Yep, still sticky. If I press on the dough as I run it over the remaining flour, I find that all the more stubborn bits get picked up just fine. I scrape the sides of the bowl despite it looking like no more flour can fit into this dry, crackery mass. And just when it's almost all mopped up, this is when I dump the bowl's contents onto the counter and knead. Nothing special here, just pressing down into the counter through the dough ball and pushing away from my body. Rotate the ball as I go to hasten the process. Split the dough ball into 2 to make things easier. Dough gets pretty dense the more there is. Now I'm kneading both of these balls until they are smooth in texture. Notice the imprint my thumb leaves in the right one there, much smoother than the unworked ball on the left. I'll add a little water from the pot as I go if the dough is feeling too chalky. You notice this if your hands start to feel very dry and any cracks in the ball aren't sealing easily. Roll these out into logs one at a time. I recommend weighing out your dough logs before finally shaping them. Here I forgot to weigh them first, but no biggie. In total, the dough should weigh about 730 grams. I split into 2 logs, so 365 grams each, roughly. Now that I have 2 equal-sized logs of dough, I just put these in a plastic bag or wrap them in plastic wrap to keep them from drying out while they rest. This step is important as it relaxes the gluten in the dough and makes it more pliable for rolling out later. 10 minutes is all that is needed. You get it? Or in my case, overnight for 3 days because, well, life. And after some time, this is how the rolls look. Very glossy, as you can see. I believe it's due to some property of the gluten, but I don't know. Looks neat. Now I need 6 tortillas out of these logs, so that means 6 equally sized dough balls. I like to use a dough scraper for cutting the dough, but you could use a butter knife or even your bare hands. There are no rules. Except I highly recommend getting these to be as similar in weight as possible. Nothing is more frustrating than having a disproportionately small tortilla for your freezer burritos when you're trying to meal prep. That's a plug for the next video. Alas, the part where I flatten my balls into thin, doughy discuses. I do this one at a time with a rolling pin. The other balls I keep covered so that they don't dry out. What I'm showing in this frame is the discoloration that has happened from the dough spending 3 nights in the fridge. My guess is that gray you see is surface level oxidation. That won't affect the final product any, so I carry on. All I'm trying to do here is get this doughy disc to be as thin and sizable as I humanly can. No need to be gentle. This dough is tough, thanks in part to the dough strengthening properties of salt. Yes, salt is why these tortillas don't tear easily. It tightens the gluten strands to make the matrix of gluten stronger. Of course, the kneading and resting I did earlier helps in building that gluten network and adds to the strength as well. You'll also notice that I'm not using any flour or oil to keep this from getting stuck to the counter. I don't need to. The dough is dry enough at 50% hydration that it comes off easily. Plus, the added friction from not using more flour or some oil allows the dough to be pulled by the rolling pin. You'll see what looks like scars in the surface as the dough dries while it's worked. This is from the pulling action of the rolling pin. I'm getting pretty far along with the first one here, as you can see how the dough starts to bubble up as it's rolled. This is a good indication that the dough is almost thinned out to its limit, but I'm wanting to push that limit. It's a good time to throw a nonstick pan on high heat, yes, all the way on high. I want these tortillas to cook fast and get some good color on them. A lower heat would just dry them out, and you want to get those tasty brown spots on either side. I'll finish rolling this one out, making sure to stretch it out that extra bit before flopping it down into the hot pan. You may think that a plain dough like this wouldn't taste like much, but the color you see is what gives these flavor. Not like that matters all that much to me. I'm just looking for a soft, chewy, carby vessel to hold my meal. And after about 30 seconds or so, I flip it with a spatula and let it go for a little longer, or until I start to see many little air bubbles start to rise up. It's at this moment I realize tortillas kind of look like giant crackers. And here is the most crucial step of this whole process. I sandwich the tortillas between two large plates. What this does is it traps any steam the tortillas are putting off, and there is a bunch. The moisture this generates keeps the tortillas from becoming crackers, and is the reason for their outstanding pliability. If you don't have plates big enough for this, a damp paper towel doubled over and laid over top of the tortillas on the counter would be just fine. Really, any contraption to lock in the moisture would work. Alright, first tortilla down, second one up. Same process. Flatten dough ball, roll it thinner. That's good. Turn on the pan because I had to turn it off from recording, making this process take way longer than it should have. Leaving a pan on high for a long time without food in it is not a good idea. Pans tend to get ruined that way. I'll flop the raw tortilla into the hot pan and get started on the next. Oh, I see bubbles. Flip. Keep rolling. Flip a second time. Here's a close-up. Look at that rise. Remove to double plate contraption and repeat. Here you can see how the steam from these piping hot tortillas condenses on the plates. Look at how much moisture these have already built up. All of this goes into making sure the tortillas don't go crisp. And there you have it. 6 12-inch plus rip-free wraps. Basically huge wonton wrappers owing their sound structure to their simple ingredient makeup. Each tortilla comes in approximately 290 calories, which sounds like a lot, but if this is your main carb in your meal and it perfectly secures the entire meal in your hands, I see these as the perfect vehicle for some tasty meal prep bites. Use them for whatever. The strength and versatility of these is just outstanding. I know what I'm going to cook with them.